Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today we're going to be talking about the peculiar story of the independent nation of Vermont. Now I know you come to a website called Founder of the Day, you expect one founder each day. We're doing a little different today. We're going to consider Vermont itself as today's founder because it is an extraordinary story what was happening in what became a very small state in the Union, geography-wise, in the middle of civil upheaval. So let's get to it. What happened was, the land that now consists of Vermont was disputed when the Revolution set in. They were considered by people from New England as the New Hampshire grants, because a royal governor of New Hampshire had written grants to give out this land to people. And it was settled by people of New Hampshire and Massachusetts and a surprising amount of people from Connecticut, actually. There were not a lot of people living there from New York. However, many people in New York believed they owned this land. And this dispute, just before the Revolution, got a little heated. And what happened was, several of these people who were living in the area formed a group called the Green Mountain Boys, who you may have heard of. They were led famously by Ethan Allen and Seth Warner. And this group came together not to fight in the Revolutionary War, but as a militia. First of all, this was kind of rough frontier. It was the wilderness. So not only were there Native Americans that you might have to protect the town from, but the French were not far away in Canada, and you might have to protect yourselves from them. So they came together more as a protective militia, but as people from New York came to kick them off the land, the Green Mountain Boys would kick these New Yorkers out. Because at the time, they were very much not United States. And there was a lot of tension building, and then the war began. Then, of course, the Green Mountain Boys joined Benedict Arnold and captured Fort Ticonderoga, and Seth Warner got Crown Point, and they would fight in the war, and that would distract things for a little while. But then, Vermont, after the Continental Congress declared independence in 1776, obviously, Vermont said, hey, can we be a state? And everyone else went, no. We don't know if you're seceding from New York or seceding from New Hampshire, or what's going on over there. So, because interestingly, Vermont was never a colony. These original 13 colonies had started a revolution, and Vermont was never a colony. So, the people in Vermont, when they were turned down for statehood, said, well, you know what? We're gonna secede from everyone. And in January 1777, about 6 months after the Declaration of Independence was announced, Vermont seceded from everything. They got rid of England, they got rid of New York, they got rid of New Hampshire, and they got rid of the United States. And they declared themselves, of course, the Independent Republic of New Connecticut. Yes, they did not call themselves Vermont. I told you there was a lot of people from Connecticut. They originally were the Republic of New Connecticut. Now, interestingly, a lot of this is based on the Connecticut River, which is where Connecticut gets its name from, because Vermont isn't touching on a map Connecticut. There's a Massachusetts in the middle there. But there were also, as I said, a lot of people from Connecticut there, in addition to the river. So about 6 months go by, and they decide to write a constitution, as an independent nation was wont to do. And it was at this point that they decide to change their name to Vermont, which apparently was recommended by, I've seen it in several places, Thomas, why does it escape me? Is it Thomas Young? Is that the name? I'm going to scroll back. Yes, Thomas Young. I got it. Dr. Thomas Young, who is a very interesting character. I will do a video about him at another time. So, here we have this independent nation of Vermont, and no one wants it there. And then there is a little bit of controversy, which I believe was called the Haldimand Affair. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but basically, Great Britain, who had Canada and was at a war with the United States, secretly negotiated with certain leaders of Connecticut to have, Vermont, to have Vermont join up with Canada, become a part of Canada. And they more or less agreed to this as it seems like as a just in case. So that way whoever wins the war will just go on their side and will either be a province of Canada or eventually a state in the Union. They kind of assumed it would happen. not everyone in the colonies assumed this was going to happen. The people of Vermont were like, this is happening. This is totally happening. So anyway, 14 years go by, and it doesn't happen. They do get Samuel Johnson from Connecticut to represent them in the Continental Congress. He was a delegate from Connecticut in the Continental Congress. William Samuel Johnson is his name. He was a delegate from Connecticut in the Continental Congress, and he asked them to represent them, the state of Vermont also, which he did, which was super nice of him. He actually, Johnson would go to the Constitutional Convention also, where Vermont asked him to represent them, although again, everyone at the Constitutional Convention was representing the Constitution and looking to, I shouldn't say everyone there was looking to do this, but the people who signed the document were looking to make one united nation. So they do that, and they unite a nation, except there's still this independent country of Vermont stuck in the middle of New England. And eventually, finally, what happens is the people of New York decide to cede their right to the land that is in Vermont so that Vermont can become a state. But New York is trying to do this so that the federal government will have to use federal courts to make a decision about who owns the land there and how much the land is worth and yada, yada, yada. So Vermont, they've wanted to join the Union for this whole time, says no thanks, not yet. First we want to determine our border with New York and settle who owns the land. So they did that. They determined the border, which we have today, and they paid about $30,000 of money in that time to say, okay, here you go, New York, here's your money, give it to the people who are claiming they owe land, and we'll call it even. And that's what they did, and after which, in 1791, Vermont became the 14th state in the Union. But they also really became the first state to join the Union. The original 13 just became states. Vermont was the first state to be let in. So that's a really brief summary of the crazy and peculiar situation that the state, the nation of Vermont was in throughout the Revolutionary period. I really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit like. It really helps me out. If you're new here, definitely subscribe to my channel. And I am going to remind you, I am going to do a live video this weekend on Friday at about 5:30 or 6. I will put an announcement out when I determine exactly what time it is. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.